On a quiet, dusty road, she found a wounded German shepherd lying beside an old wooden cart. Everyone said the dog was dying, that saving him wasn't worth it. But she reached into her pocket, pulled out a crumpled $1 bill, and whispered, "I'll take him." No one could have imagined what would happen next. That single act of kindness would uncover a secret buried for years, one that would leave everyone speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The afternoon sun hung low over the dusty countryside road, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. A soft breeze stirred the dry grass as a little girl named Emily walked home from the village market, clutching a small basket of groceries. Her shoes were worn, her dress simple, but her eyes carried that quiet spark of kindness that made people stop and smile. She had only $1 left, a crumpled bill her father had given her for helping him in the garden. As she walked past an old wooden cart near the edge of the road, she froze. There, lying in a bed of straw, was a German shepherd, motionless except for the faint rise and fall of its chest. Its fur was matted with dust and dried blood, and its breathing came in uneven gasps. Emily's heart clenched. She dropped her basket and ran closer. A rugged man stood beside the cart, wiping sweat from his brow. "Poor thing won't last the night," he muttered. "Got hit by a car, I reckon. I'm taking him to the pound." Emily's small voice trembled. "The pound? They'll put him to sleep, won't they?" The man shrugged. "Ain't no use saving a dying dog, sweetheart. Some things you just gotta let go." But Emily didn't move. She knelt beside the cart, her little fingers brushing gently over the dog's muzzle. The shepherd opened his eyes just barely, and for a brief second their gazes locked. Something passed between them, something unspoken. It was as if the dog was pleading, "Don't leave me." Emily's throat tightened. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her last dollar, and held it out with trembling hands. "Please, mister. I'll buy him from you." The man blinked, caught off guard. "You're offering me $1 for a dying dog?" She nodded, her voice steady now. "He deserves a chance. Everyone does." For a moment, silence filled the road. The man looked at the fragile piece of paper in her hand, then at the determined little girl before him. Finally, he sighed and took the dollar. "He's yours, then. But don't say I didn't warn you." Emily smiled faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Thank you." As the man walked away, she turned back to the cart. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I'll take care of you." The dog blinked slowly as if understanding. The wind rustled the fields around them, carrying with it the promise of something extraordinary, born from a single dollar and a heart that refused to give up. The old man stood silently for a moment, watching the little girl as she stroked the injured German shepherd's head. The wind lifted his coat slightly, carrying the smell of dust and old leather. His eyes, once hardened by years of disappointment, softened for a brief instant, but only for a moment. Life had taught him not to get attached. He had seen too many creatures come and go, too many things broken beyond repair. "You're wasting your kindness, girl," he muttered, adjusting the reins of his cart. His voice was rough, worn like gravel. "That dog's been through hell. Hit by a car, left on the side of the road. Been dragging him for miles, hoping someone would take him. You're the first fool to stop." Emily ignored the sting of his words. Her focus stayed on the dog, its slow breathing, the faint twitch of its ear. "He's not just a dog," she whispered. "He's scared." The man let out a tired laugh. "Scared, hurt, half dead, call it what you want. He won't make it through the night. You'll only break your heart." Emily stood tall, her small shoulders squaring with quiet courage. "Then I'll stay with him through the night." The man looked at her, a child maybe 8 or 9 standing in front of him with more resolve than most grown-ups he'd met. Something about her tone reminded him of someone long gone, someone who used to believe in hopeless causes too. He finally sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You sure you want this trouble? I could take him away now, save you the pain." She shook her head firmly. "He's mine now." "You said it." The man studied her for a moment longer before nodding slowly. "All right then. Take him, but remember, not every story has a happy ending." Emily looked up at him, eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. "Maybe this one will." For the first time, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. He tipped his hat and climbed onto his cart. As the wheels creaked away down the lonely road, Emily lifted the dog gently into her arms. Behind her, the setting sun dipped low, stretching their shadows long across the dirt. One girl, one broken dog, and a story that was only just beginning. The sun had nearly vanished behind the hills by the time Emily managed to lift the wounded German Shepherd onto her little wooden wagon. The cart creaked under his weight, the straw rustling softly beneath him. She tied the old rope handles to her bicycle, her small hands trembling but determined. The dirt road stretched endlessly ahead, the horizon glowing in a mix of fading gold and rising blue, a world balanced between hope and nightfall. Emily glanced back at the dog. His breathing was shallow, each exhale a soft wheeze. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling in the quiet evening air. "We're going home now." With that, she began to pedal. The wheels rolled unevenly over the gravel, the cart bumping gently with every turn. Her legs burned, her throat tightened, but she refused to stop. Every sound, and the squeak of the chain, the whisper of wind, the faint whimper from the cart, filled the growing silence around her. A few villagers watched as she passed by, their faces lit by the orange glow of lanterns. Some smiled at her courage, others shook their heads at what they saw as childish foolishness. "That dog won't last the night," one man muttered to another. "Poor kid's wasting her heart." Emily heard but didn't look back. "You'll make it," she said softly, as if her words alone could keep him alive. "You have to." As the road curved toward the outskirts of the village, a cool wind swept through the trees. The scent of rain and soil filled the air, brushing against her cheeks. She reached out once to steady the dog, her small hand resting on his side. His fur was coarse, damp with sweat and dirt, but beneath it she felt something, a faint heartbeat. Weak but steady, her heart swelled. "See?" she whispered. "You're still fighting." The old farmhouse appeared in the distance, its windows glowing faintly against the darkening sky. Her father's tractor stood still near the barn, and smoke rose lazily from the chimney. She felt a spark of relief. They were close. By the time she reached the gate, her legs felt like jelly. She jumped off her bike and ran to the cart. The shepherd's eyes flickered open again, tired but aware. "You're safe now," she said, kneeling beside him. "This is your home." The last light of day fell gently over them, a girl, a broken hero, and the fragile beginning of something extraordinary that neither of them yet understood. By the time Emily dragged the wagon up the porch steps, the moon had risen high, bathing the farmhouse in a cool silvery glow. Crickets chirped softly in the fields beyond, their rhythm mingling with the faint rustle of hay. Inside, the warm flicker of a kerosene lamp cast gentle light across the wooden floor. Emily's father looked up from his chair, startled. "Emily," he said, his brow furrowing. "What on earth?" Before he could finish, she pushed the door open wider. The sight of the injured German shepherd made his words catch in his throat. The dog lay motionless, head resting on the edge of the wagon, his sides rising and falling unevenly. "I bought him," Emily said simply, her voice soft but sure. "For $1. Her father stared, speechless. "Sweetheart, you can't just—" "He was dying," she interrupted, her eyes shimmering. Nobody else was helping him. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then her father sighed, running a rough hand through his hair. He had always known that his daughter's heart was too big for the small world they lived in. "All right," he said at last, voice heavy with quiet acceptance. "Let's see what we can do." Together they laid the shepherd onto an old quilt near the fireplace. Emily fetched warm water and a towel while her father inspected the wounds. A deep gash on his side, bruises along his legs, a paw that bent awkwardly. The sight made Emily's chest tighten. As she dabbed his fur with the wet cloth, the dog whimpered softly, his ears twitching in pain. Emily flinched but didn't stop. "Shh, it's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's been through a lot," he murmured. "He might not make it through the night." Emily looked up, her eyes fierce despite the tears glistening in them. "Then I'll stay with him. He won't be alone." Hours passed. The old clock ticked steadily as the firelight danced across the walls. Emily sat beside the dog, stroking his head gently, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The shepherd's breathing slowed, then steadied. He shifted slightly, his nose brushing against her hand, a quiet gesture of trust. Emily smiled through the haze of sleep. "Good boy," she murmured, and as the storm rolled closer, the little girl and her broken guardian drifted into the night. two souls both wounded, finding comfort in each other's presence. Morning sunlight streamed through the cracked wooden window, spilling soft golden light across the room. The fire from the night before had burned low, leaving only glowing embers that whispered faint warmth into the cool dawn. Emily stirred awake on the floor, her head resting beside the German shepherd's paw. For a moment she didn't move, afraid that if she did he might slip away like a fading dream. Then she heard it, a faint, shallow breath. He was still alive. Relief flooded through her chest as she sat up quickly, brushing the sleep from her eyes. "You made it," she whispered, her lips curling into a trembling smile. Her father entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm broth. He knelt beside her and watched as Emily dipped a spoon and gently brought it to the dog's mouth. At first he turned his head weakly away, but when she spoke again, soft, encouraging, he took a hesitant sip. "That's it," she murmured, voice filled with hope. "You're stronger than you think." Her father's gaze softened. "You really believe he'll pull through?" Emily nodded, her small fingers tracing the dog's rough fur. "He has to. He just needs someone to believe in him." For a long time her father said nothing. Then he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've got your mother's heart," he said quietly. She used to say the same thing. Emily smiled faintly, blinking back tears. "Mom always said that when you choose to care, you have to go all the way, no matter how hard it gets." She looked back at the German shepherd, whose eyes fluttered open just enough to meet hers. In that moment, something wordless passed between them. A silent promise. Emily reached out and laid her palm against his chest, feeling the slow rhythm of his heartbeat. "I'm not giving up on you," she whispered. "Not today, not ever." The dog exhaled softly, his gaze steady as if he understood. Outside, the wind carried the scent of blooming fields and distant rain. A new beginning. And inside that small farmhouse, a vow was made. A girl's unshakable faith would fight against fate itself. Days turned into weeks, and the once lifeless German shepherd slowly began to awaken to the rhythm of life again. Emily named him Rex, a name her mother once gave to a stray dog they had rescued years ago. "It means king," she said softly one morning while placing a small bowl of milk beside him. "And you, Rex, you're going to rise again." At first, his recovery was fragile, every breath shallow, every step uncertain. Emily spent hours tending to him, wrapping his wounds with strips of clean cloth and speaking to him in the quiet tones of someone who believed in miracles. Her father built a small shelter near the porch where Rex could rest in the sun. Sometimes she'd catch her father watching from the doorway, shaking his head with a smile. "You're stubborn, just like him," he'd say. Rex still didn't bark. He barely even moved. But his eyes, those deep, intelligent eyes, began to follow Emily wherever she went. When she carried water from the well or fed the chickens, he'd lift his head, tracking her every motion. And when she sat near him reading from her old storybook, his tail twitched faintly against the dirt floor. Just once, but enough to make her heart leap. The first real sign of hope came on a cloudy afternoon. A sudden gust of wind slammed the back door shut, echoing through the farmhouse. Emily jumped, and so did Rex. His head shot up, his ears perked, and a low rumble vibrated from his chest. It wasn't pain this time. It was instinct. Emily froze, then smiled through the tears that welled in her eyes. "That's it, Rex," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "You remember who you are?" That evening, she took him outside for the first time. The grass was damp from morning rain, and the sky shimmered with fading streaks of light. Rex took a hesitant step forward, then another. His injured paw trembled, but he refused to stop. Emily walked beside him, her hand hovering near his shoulder. When he finally sat down under the old oak tree, breathing heavily, she wrapped her arms around his neck. His fur still carried the faint scent of medicine and earth, but beneath it was something familiar, the warmth of survival. "You're getting stronger," she whispered into his ear. Rex leaned his head against her shoulder, letting out a deep sigh that sounded almost like gratitude. For the first time since that fateful day, Emily knew the worst was over. Hope had won its first battle. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Emily made the discovery that would change everything. The sun had just begun to filter through the branches, scattering golden flecks across the grass where Rex lay dozing peacefully. His coat, once dull and matted, now glistened with life. Each breath he took was steady, full of quiet strength. Emily sat nearby, sketching him in her little notebook. She had drawn him nearly every day since the day she found him, documenting his recovery like a promise kept. As she reached out to stroke his neck, her fingers brushed against something rough beneath his fur, a patch of worn leather. Curious, she parted the hair and found an old, half-torn collar, its buckle rusted and edges frayed. But what caught her attention wasn't the leather itself. It was the faint burned-in marking near the clasp. It wasn't a name. It was a number. R217, she read aloud, her brows knitting together. What does that mean? Rex lifted his head at the sound of her voice. His ears twitched, and for a moment there was a flash in his eyes. Recognition, maybe even unease. Emily gently turned the collar over, noticing something else. A small metal chip embedded under the stitching. She tried to pry it loose, but it was stuck tight. Her father walked out from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. What's that you've got there? It's his collar, Emily said, holding it up. But look, it has a number. And this metal thing, it looks official. Her father frowned, taking it from her and examining it closely. That's not a regular pet collar. This looks military, or police issue. Emily's heart skipped a beat. You mean Rex might have belonged to someone? He nodded slowly. Or he might have been part of something bigger. A working dog, maybe. Canine unit, search and rescue, who knows? Rex shifted uneasily, letting out a low whine. Emily reached out to comfort him, pressing her palm gently against his chest. It's okay, boy, she murmured. Whatever you were before, you're safe now. But her mind wouldn't rest. That number, R217, echoed like a mystery she couldn't ignore. Who had he been? What had happened to him before she found him broken on that road? As the afternoon light stretched long and soft, Emily sat beside Rex, turning the collar over in her hands again and again. She didn't realize it yet, but this small discovery had just unlocked the past, and someone, somewhere, would soon come looking for it. 3 months had passed since the day Emily bought Rex for $1. The wounds on his body had healed, but the mystery of his past lingered like an unfinished story. His training instincts sometimes surfaced. The way he scanned the horizon, how he reacted to sudden noises, or the sharp discipline in his movements. Emily often wondered what kind of life he had before her. One evening, while she and her father were tending the garden, a distant rumble echoed down the dirt road. A truck slowed near the gate, its engine grumbling like a restless beast. Dust swirled around its tires as it came to a stop. Emily shaded her eyes, and her heart skipped. It was him. The same rugged man from the day she found Rex climbed out of the driver's seat. His clothes were cleaner now, his face freshly shaven, but there was something uneasy in the way he moved, like a man searching for something he'd lost. Well, I'll be, he said with a forced chuckle. Didn't think that Mutt would survive. Emily instinctively stepped closer to Rex, who was sitting beside her. The dog's posture changed instantly. Ears up, muscles tense, eyes locked onto the man. He didn't bark, but a low growl hummed deep in his chest. The man noticed. Still doesn't trust me, huh? Her father stepped forward, his voice firm but polite. Can we help you with something? The man's eyes flicked to Rex again, then back to Emily. Just wanted to see how the dog turned out. Heard rumors in town that some little girl saved a shepherd from the dead. Didn't think it was true. Emily kept her hand on Rex's back, her thumb brushing over his fur. You sold him to me, she said quietly. For $1, he smirked. Guess I made a bad deal. Something about the way he said it made her father's jaw tighten. There was no warmth in his tone and only calculation. Well, you made your choice, her father replied evenly. He's ours now. The man's eyes lingered on Rex for a long moment, too long. Then, with a curt nod, he turned back toward his truck. As the engine roared to life and faded down the road, Rex stood at the gate, staring after him. His tail was still, his ears alert. Something deep inside him remembered that man. And it wasn't kindness. That night, the wind began to howl through the trees, bending the branches until they scraped against the farmhouse windows. The sky rumbled with the promise of rain, and flashes of lightning lit up the distant hills like silent explosions. Inside, Emily sat near the fireplace brushing Rex's fur while her father checked the doors. Storm's gonna be rough, he murmured. Best stay inside tonight. Rex's ears twitched. He wasn't looking at the fire or listening to the thunder. His gaze was fixed on the window. A low growl rolled from his throat, soft but warning. Emily frowned. "What is it, boy?" Her father followed Rex's line of sight. Beyond the glass, the darkness seemed to ripple. The wind pushed the barn door open with a hollow creak, and the rain finally began to pour. He sighed. Probably just the wind. "I'll lock it up," but Rex didn't relax. He stood, muscles taut, tail straight, eyes locked onto the yard. Emily felt a chill trace her spine. The storm roared louder as her father stepped outside with a lantern. Moments later, thunder cracked, and Rex barked, sharp and fierce, the sound slicing through the night like an alarm. Emily jumped. "Dad?" She called out, but the rain drowned her voice. Another flash of lightning. And in that instant, she saw it through the window. A dark silhouette slipping past the barn, heading toward the back of the house. Her breath caught. "Someone's out there." Rex lunged toward the door, growling louder now. Emily's heart raced. She grabbed the nearest flashlight and ran after him. The old hinges shrieked as she pushed open the door, rain drenching her in seconds. "Dad," she cried, then she heard it. A muffled shout, the clatter of metal, and Rex's deep, furious bark. The beam of her flashlight swung wildly until it landed on the scene near the barn. Her father was struggling with a masked man, the lantern knocked into the mud. Another figure was creeping from behind, until Rex charged like lightning unleashed. The shepherd collided with the intruder, teeth bared, forcing him to the ground. The man screamed as Rex pinned him, growling low, protective fury blazing in his eyes. The other attacker froze, terrified by the sight. Emily's father snatched a fallen shovel and swung hard, sending the second man stumbling into the mud. Within moments, neighbors, drawn by the barking, rushed over with flashlights and shouts. The two intruders tried to flee, but Rex was faster. He stood guard until they were caught. As the rain poured down, Emily threw her arms around Rex, trembling. "You saved us," she whispered. The thunder faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat and the steady, loyal breathing of the dog who had once been left for dead, now standing as her family's protector. The storm raged on, but inside the farmhouse the chaos had reached its peak. One of the intruders had broken free and darted toward the back door, slipping in the mud as lightning flashed across the sky. Emily's father chased after him, shouting for help, but the wind swallowed his voice. Rex, still soaked and trembling from the rain, bolted forward like a bullet. His paws splashed through puddles as he raced into the darkness. Emily followed with the flashlight, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the thunder anymore. The fleeing man stumbled near the fence, trying to climb over. His boot slipped, and in that instant Rex lunged. His jaws locked onto the man's sleeve, yanking him down into the mud. The intruder swung wildly, kicking, cursing, but Rex didn't back off. His growls echoed through the storm, raw and primal like thunder from the earth itself. "Rex, careful," Emily cried, her voice cracking through the rain. But Rex knew what he was doing. Every move was precise, controlled. He wasn't attacking out of rage. He was protecting. His training, buried deep beneath months of silence and pain, had returned in full force. The second man tried to run toward the truck parked near the trees, but Emily's father intercepted him, shouting for the neighbors who were already rushing in from the road with flashlights. The glow of their beams danced wildly across the field as Rex pinned the first man down, refusing to let go until the police sirens wailed in the distance. When the officers finally arrived, drenched and breathless, the scene left them stunned. A young girl clinging to her dog, her father standing guard, two intruders on the ground, and a German shepherd that looked every bit the hero he once was. One officer approached cautiously, holding out his hand. "Easy there, boy." Rex didn't move until Emily whispered, "It's okay, Rex, you did it." At her voice, his growls softened. He released the man's arm and stepped back, panting hard. His fur dripped with rain, his eyes glowing in the flashing red and blue lights. The officer knelt down, astonished. "That's one brave dog you've got here." Emily wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, burying her face in his soaked fur. "He's more than brave," she said softly. "He's family." As the police led the captured men away, Rex sat beside Emily, watching them go, calm, alert, and unshakably proud. Lightning flashed one last time, and for a brief, perfect moment, the world saw him not as a wounded stray, but as the hero he was always meant to be. By the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and eerily quiet. The farmhouse smelled of wet earth and wood smoke as officers moved about, taking statements, snapping photographs, and marking footprints in the mud. Emily sat on the porch steps with Rex by her side, wrapped in a blanket. The German Shepherd's fur was still damp, but his eyes were sharp, alert, as if he was ready for whatever came next. The sheriff, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, knelt down beside them. "That dog of yours," he said with a low whistle. "He saved your lives last night. Those two weren't just random thieves. We've been tracking their gang for months." Emily's father frowned. "Gang?" The sheriff nodded grimly. "Smugglers. They've been using abandoned farms and barns to move stolen goods. Weapons, money, anything that'll sell. We found one of their marks carved into your back fence." Emily's stomach turned cold. "But why come here?" "That's the part that's strange," the sheriff said, glancing toward Rex. "One of the men kept shouting about a dog, said something about unfinished business." Her father's brow furrowed. "You mean Rex?" Before the sheriff could answer, another officer approached, holding a small evidence bag. Inside it was the torn collar Emily had found weeks earlier, the one marked R217. "We scanned it," the officer said. "It's not just a number tag. It's a microchip code. Government registered." Emily leaned forward. "Government?" The sheriff nodded. "This dog isn't just a stray. According to the database, R217 was a K-9 officer assigned to a police narcotics unit. He went missing 8 months ago after a raid went wrong. The officer he was partnered with was killed." Emily's breath caught. She looked down at Rex, who sat quietly, his eyes steady but distant, as if he somehow understood the words. The sheriff continued softly. "We thought he died too. But it looks like someone took him, maybe to sell him off." He paused, his expression hardening. "And that man who sold him to you, Emily, we're almost certain he's part of the same smuggling ring." Her father clenched his fists. "That explains why he came back." Emily wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, her voice trembling. "He wasn't just warning us. He was protecting us again." The sheriff nodded. "He's not just a dog, kid. He's a hero, and twice over." Rex turned his head toward Emily then, eyes soft and knowing. In that quiet moment, she realized he hadn't only found a new home, he had found his mission again. The following days unfolded in a blur of questions, reports, and unexpected visitors. The once quiet farmhouse now buzzed with activity as police cars came and went. For Emily, everything felt surreal, as though the world had suddenly realized what she and Rex already knew, that he was special. But beneath the relief was unease. The man who had sold Rex and the one who returned weeks later was still out there. And Rex knew it. Every evening as the sun dipped low behind the fields, he'd sit by the fence, ears pricked, gaze fixed on the road. Emily noticed it every time. "He's waiting," she whispered to her father one night. "He knows something isn't over." Her father nodded grimly. Maybe it's time to end it for good. That end came sooner than anyone expected. It was just past noon when a black pickup truck pulled onto the dirt road. The same rugged man stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. He wasn't smiling this time. His eyes darted toward the barn, then to the house, as if calculating his next move. Rex's growl broke the silence, deep, low, and dangerous. Emily froze at the window. "Dad," she whispered. "It's him." Her father moved quickly, stepping onto the porch just as the sheriff's unmarked car rolled in from the other side of the field. The man hesitated, realizing he was trapped. "You set me up," he spat, glaring at Emily's father. The sheriff approached, his tone calm but commanding. "You've got a lot to answer for, Henry. Selling a police dog? Running with smugglers? It's over." Henry's face twisted with anger. "That mutt was mine. You don't know what he's worth." Before anyone could move, Rex lunged forward, not to attack but to block Henry's path as he turned to flee. The shepherd stood firm, teeth bared, body coiled like steel. Henry froze, staring into those fierce amber eyes, and for the first time his bravado crumbled. "Call him off," he shouted. Emily stepped out onto the porch, her voice clear and steady. "He's not your dog. He never was." Moments later, the sheriff's deputies closed in, handcuffing Henry as Rex stood guard until it was done. As they led the man away, Emily knelt beside Rex, running her hand through his fur. "It's over, boy," she whispered, but Rex didn't relax. He simply watched the road, his gaze strong and silent, as if promising her that no matter what came next, he would always stand between her and danger. News of Rex's bravery spread faster than Emily could have imagined. Within days, reporters and camera crews began showing up at the farmhouse, their vans parked along the dusty road. The small town that once whispered about the poor girl wasting her heart on a dying dog now gathered proudly outside her gate. Emily stood beside Rex as microphones and flashes surrounded them. The German Shepherd sat tall, calm and regal, the faint scar on his side glowing under the morning sun, a symbol of everything he had survived. The sheriff stood nearby giving his statement to the crowd. "This dog wasn't just lucky," he said. "He was loyal, brave, and unstoppable. If it weren't for Rex, 2 people could have lost their lives that night." The crowd applauded and Rex's ears perked at the sound. Emily smiled, gently resting her hand on his neck. "He's always been a hero," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. A woman stepped forward, holding a small velvet box. "On behalf of the County K-9 Division," she announced, "we present this Medal of Honor to Rex, identification R2117, for exceptional courage and service." The moment felt almost unreal. The crowd fell silent as she pinned the medal to Rex's collar. He didn't understand the applause, the speeches, or the cameras. But when Emily wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "You deserve this," his tail wagged softly, and that was enough. Later that evening, when the noise had faded and the fields had grown quiet again, Emily sat on the porch with Rex curled at her feet. Her father joined them, handing her a folded newspaper. On the front page, a bold headline read, "The Dollar That Saved a Hero." She traced the words with her finger, smiling. "You see, Rex," she whispered, "that $1 was the best thing I ever spent." Rex looked up at her, eyes full of warmth and understanding, then rested his head on her lap. The golden light of sunset wrapped around them like a gentle embrace. A girl and her dog, no longer broken or lost, but bound forever by faith, courage, and love that had defied every odd weeks past. And life slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm on the farm. The media attention faded, the cameras left, and the world moved on. But for Emily and Rex, everything had changed forever. The bond between them had grown into something beyond words, deeper than any friendship. They no longer needed to speak to understand each other. One glance, one soft nudge, and they knew exactly what the other felt. Every morning, Rex would sit by Emily's door, waiting patiently for her to wake up. The moment she stepped outside, he'd rise, tail wagging, ready to follow her anywhere. To the fields, to the stream, even to the village school. The teachers had long stopped scolding her for bringing him along. Everyone knew that where Emily went, Rex followed. She would talk to him about everything. Her dreams, her fears, the stories she still wanted to write. "You changed my life, Rex," she'd often say, her voice filled with quiet awe. "You taught me what loyalty really means." Rex would tilt his head, listening as if he understood every word. Sometimes he'd place his paw gently on her knee, a silent gesture that said, "You saved me too." But beneath the warmth of their days lingered a truth Emily could not ignore. Rex's past. The sheriff had offered to take him back to the K-9 Division, saying he deserved to serve again, but Emily had refused. "He's done enough serving," she said firmly. "He deserves peace." Still, Rex hadn't forgotten who he was. Whenever thunder rolled in the distance or a stranger approached the gate, his instincts returned. Protective, alert, unyielding. Emily never feared again, not with him around. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Emily sat on the porch steps, her hand resting on Rex's back. The air was warm and still, filled with the scent of summer wheat and the distant hum of crickets. She watched him stare out across the fields, strong, steady, and content. "You know," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Mom used to say angels come in many forms. I think she was right." Rex turned his head, his eyes meeting hers, calm, loyal, eternal. The sky deepened into gold and purple as she leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. In that quiet, perfect moment, she realized something profound. Love didn't need words, and heroes didn't need medals. Sometimes all it took was one soul recognizing another. The seasons changed, and time moved gently forward. But the story of the $1 dog became something of a legend in their small town. Children would often stop by the farmhouse just to see the brave German shepherd who had once saved a girl and helped catch criminals. But to Emily, Rex was never a legend. He was simply family. One crisp autumn morning, golden leaves blanketed the yard as she sat on the porch, watching Rex chase the falling foliage. His fur shimmered in the sunlight, healthy and thick, his movements strong and sure. Every leap, every turn carried the grace of a creature who had once stood at the edge of death and chosen life instead. Her father stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "Hard to believe it's been a year," he said, smiling softly. "A year since that dollar changed everything." Emily nodded, her eyes following Rex as he trotted toward them, tail wagging proudly. "It feels like yesterday," she said, her voice warm with gratitude. "That $1 didn't just buy me a dog. It brought me my best friend, and a guardian." Rex stopped in front of her, resting his head on her knee. She stroked his fur, her touch tender. "You know, boy," she whispered, "I thought I was saving you that day. But the truth is, you saved me." Rex looked up, his deep brown eyes glimmering with quiet understanding. For a moment the world seemed to pause. No sound but the rustling leaves and the soft rhythm of his breath. As the sun dipped low behind the fields, Emily wrapped her arms around him. "You'll always be my hero," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Rex pressed his muzzle against her shoulder, his tail thumping gently, a silent promise that no matter where life took them, his loyalty would never fade. The camera of life seemed to pull back then. The girl, the dog, the setting sun painting the fields in gold. Their story wasn't about luck or miracles. It was about faith, love, and the unbreakable bond between 2 souls who found each other when the world had given up. And as Emily smiled through her tears, one truth echoed through the wind. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can lead to the greatest miracle of all.